I am live, and I am reading out of Lord of the Horizon. It is a far memory book by Joan Marshall Grant. She wrote 7 far memory books. She passed away in 1989, and this book is about Ra-Ab. We continue the story of Ra-Ab from the eyes of Horus. They were a group who overthrew the dark entity Set. We are here now in the second part of this, Eyes of Horus, and Lord of the Horizon, sorry. And we're in chapter 8 of this second part, Obedient Monkeys. I had recently appointed an overseer to the new stone quarry, and was going over the tallies with him when Mary came to the room of seals. I saw that she was worried, so I told the overseer that I would hear the rest of his report the following morning. As soon as he left us, I asked Mary what had happened. "It's Beckett. You'll have to talk to her, Ra-Ab. I can't do any more. Niam was your nurse and Beckett is your daughter, and I'm tired of defending them from each other. Either Niam must stop trying to look after the children, or Beckett has got to be more tactful with her." I put my arms around her shoulders. "Mary, my love, I am distressed that you are worried, and comforted that the cause is nothing more serious. When you came in, you looked so upset that I thought at least a pestilence had broken out. Then I realized that I should have expressed myself with more tact. To Mary, this quarrel between Beckett and Niam had become very important. Therefore, it was important. I'm sorry, I said. It was stupid of me. Tell me what Beckett has done, and I'll see if I can find some way to reason with her. I send her to you, but I know what will happen. You will try to be cross with her and to look stern, but by the time she's finished, you will be saying to yourself, 'She's just like Kia's, only more so,' and then you'll feel as though you were 10 years old again, and you and Beckett will be fellow conspirators, thinking of new ways to outwit the grown-ups." I felt rather guilty, for though the picture Mary drew was exaggerated, I recognized that a few of the lines were perhaps a faithful reproduction. "You're wrong, Mary, if you think that Beckett can influence my judgment. You have often said that it is essential to judge a child as though one were a child oneself. As a grown-up, the things which Beckett does may be very tiresome and even dangerous, but through the eyes of Ra-Ab, as he was 20 years ago, her actions are not only understandable, but fill me with pride that I'm her father, even though that pride is sometimes mingled with exasperation." Mary tried to look severe. "Now you're doing it, Ra-Ab, twisting serious things so that they seem trivial, and worse, making them look funny. I have scolded Beckett, and I think she is almost apologetic. If you go and make a joke of it, she will be just as naughty by tomorrow." "What has she done?" "It's your fault as much as hers. I told you years ago that she mustn't be allowed to bring every animal she has suddenly grown fond of into the house. Toads and frogs and rats, 2 gazelles. They were quite reasonable pets, even though they did eat some of my favorite plants. Then there was this horrible little crocodile you let her keep in the lotus pool. It was a very small crocodile. Yes, but it would have grown. In fact, it was growing. I admit that I was thankful when it died, even though Beckett wept for hours. She has got 5 dogs, 3 of which seem to be constantly having puppies. I suppose that's reasonable for a child who is fond of animals. But is it necessary for her to have 4 monkeys with the most disgusting personal habits, to keep 3 lizards in a box under her bed, to keep a snake in her water jar? It's not a poisonous snake." She stood up and stamped her foot. "Ra-Ab, sometimes I could slap you. You make me look unreasonable, when it's you who are being unreasonable. Beckett is my daughter too. She is 10, nearly grown up. She's not interested in clothes or houses. She's not even interested in the fact that she is growing beautiful. She would have done a lot better if she had been born a hound boy. I gave her a lovely room on her last anniversary, and now it's unrecognizable. Legs chewed off the furniture, and the curtains I had embroidered for her are torn into strips. And what did you do? You deliberately went and gave her a leopard. If she had found it for herself, it would have been bad enough, but you gave it to her. I know I did, Mary, I said miserably, but you see, when I saw the cover, I was not grown up at that moment. I was the Ra-Ab who had so desperately wanted a leopard and not been allowed to have one. I knew just how much Beckett wanted it, because it was a desire that I had experienced, and part of me was still experiencing it. Mary can't remember how happy she was when I gave it to her. And I'm sure it won't hurt her. She's got a kinship with animals, which they all recognize. Don't you remember when you first saw her with a cub? I brought you to her room, for it was to be a special surprise. The leopard was curled up in her arms, purring like a cat. Don't you remember how happy she was? Her face softened. Dear Beckett. Then she said firmly, no, Ra-Ab, she's not always dear Beckett. Those animals of hers are as intelligent as demons, and when she's annoyed with anyone, she tells them, and I'm sure they understand. This morning, one of the women's servants grumbled to Beckett. As well she might, for the monkeys had been eating fruit and had scattered pieces of rind all over the room. I admit that Beckett helped to clear it up, but the woman went on grumbling, and Beckett said to her, be careful or the monkeys will hear you. I suppose they did, because they went to that poor woman's room and tore her best wig to pieces and threw all the rest of her things out of the window. I felt the corner of my mouth twitch and with a great effort of will drove away a smile. I admit that monkeys are sometimes destructive, but I don't think it would be just to blame Beckett for their behavior, any more than it would be just to blame you for what Beckett did. I'm sure she told them to do it. As soon as I heard about it, I went to find her, and she was sitting in the fig tree at the end of the garden. The two largest monkeys were on each side of her, with their arms around her waist, and the other two were sitting on a branch opposite. She was talking to them, and they were chattering back to her. I know they were telling her what they had done, and that she was praising them. She had been feeding them with pieces of honeycomb, and her hands were disgustingly sticky. When I told her what the monkeys had done, she pretended to be surprised, and then she said to them, what naughty little monkeys you are. Haven't I often told you that you must never annoy people on purpose? And she said it in exactly my tone of voice. But it was all done very politely, so I couldn't even be formally angry with her for being impertinent, though she knew as well as I did that she deserved to be scolded. I think you're being rather unfair, Mary. You're remembering the more inconvenient aspects of Beckett's really remarkable power with animals and forgetting the amount of good she has done already. When she first asked that a place be built where sick animals could be brought to be cured, you wished to discourage the idea. It is very seldom that I disagree with you, and even more seldom that I'm glad to have done so. But I think you must agree that Beckett's idea had proved more than justified. So many sick animals have been cured that now she has 15 boys, whose sole duty is to care for them. And in addition, there is a physician and a young priest of Ptah, who devote all their time to healing their younger brothers. I hope there will soon be a similar community in every known, devoted both to sick animals and to improving the welfare of animals generally. When all this is weighed in the scales against the trivial inconvenience of the destruction of a servant's wig, I think you will find my attitude of tolerance is fully justified. I also think that a visit to our treasure room would convince you that to replace anything which one of Beckett's animals may inadvertently damage is not beyond the limit of our resources. There were tears in Mary's eyes, and I was instantly contrite. Forgive me for being unkind. It is not that I don't understand how difficult it is to keep all the currents of a great household smooth and unruffled. I will tell Beckett to try to keep her animals from annoying the rest of the household. But to her, they are like children, and parents seldom realize that the cries of their newborn are not music in the ear of all who hear them. I picked Mary up and set her on my knee. Let us forget the difficulties caused by our daughter, and remember only the peace between ourselves. Her cheek was cold and smooth under my lips. Then she relaxed and leaned back against my shoulder. I know that I'm being mollified, she said, and her voice was warm. I was determined when I came to you that I was not going to leave this room until I had made you promise that Beckett must send away her leopard, and that the other animals must either have an enclosure built for them or in some way be kept out of the house. Let's think of all that another time. You mean let's not think of all that at any time? Perhaps I do. Perhaps you're right, and it is I who am foolish. I may be growing like the woman who kept her house in such perfect order that her husband couldn't live in it. Do you remember her, Ra-Ab? Yes, I remember. Her husband was a cowherd, wasn't he? Yes, she used to make him eat his meals on a bench outside the door in case he brought mud into the house. She said to me, when he refused to enter the house at all, and said that he preferred to sleep with the oxen, "Do you think I'm getting like her?" I pretended to look at her very critically. As yet I cannot see the slightest resemblance. Should I ever see one, I will immediately inform you, and I will have my bed carried out to one of the stalls which were built for the noble bulls which came from Heliocos' herd. It would not, I think, be fitting for a nomarch to share the quarters of a lesser breed of cattle. No, Ra-Ab, I'm being serious. I always think of you and me as ideal parents. We realize our children are themselves and that we only provided bodies for them to wear. I know that all we can do is to teach them how to cultivate the virtues they have already acquired, and to become strong enough to attain those virtues which they still lack. Why should my daughter be like me? Her face is like mine, but why should her thoughts be mine because of that? If another woman and I wear tunics made from the same roll of linen, does that make us twin sisters? I reproach Beckett because she has not all my virtues, and forget to reproach myself because I have not hers. My very dear, you and your daughter share many virtues, beauty and courage and truth and laughter. And one day she will be wise as you are wise, for both of you will give love and so receive it. That was chapter 8, and chapter 9 is the next one, Fear in the Marshes. Today is Thursday, and it's the 4th of April 2024.